kingdom is really back in whatever it takes mode. I mean, the decision to cut 1 million barrels of production off the market, that was not expected. There was an OPEC meeting that's scheduled for June 10th. To come out weeks before that meeting and announce this big production cut, it looks like they're trying to give a shot of adrenaline to the oil market to get prices higher, and they really do need prices in a more constructive place. Hadley, you talked about the significant budget cuts that we're seeing in the kingdom. They've tripled the VAT. They announced that over the weekend. They're phasing out allowances for government workers. They're cutting spending on key infrastructure projects. So the kingdom is basically cutting both output and spending at the same time in the hopes that they can get the fiscal position in a better shape going into 2021. But when we look at our oil price outlook for 2021, if demand remains still muted, we're talking about prices in the 40s, and that's really well below what the kingdom needs. So they will having to borrow more next year, run deficits next year if they can't get prices in a more constructive place.
You know what's going to be interesting here? I mean, the conversations that I'm having in this part of the world, basically two schools of thought, that this is a panic move by the government. They're trying to protect government finances and attempt to spur the economy at some point by that kind of big spending that we've seen them do over the last several decades. Or is this a genius move instead to drive consumption in the short term? Because basically the implementations of these cuts and the VAT and all of this, they're basically waiting to do that till July. So is this about, postponing it and then retracting it? You've got to wonder what the thinking is here at this point. Is this a panic move?
I mean, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to show that they are being fiscally responsible. I mean, you think about what the IMF has urged Saudi for years. So on the one hand, they could say, look, we're using the opportunity of lower oil prices to take some needed economic steps in terms of righting the ship. But the question is, what does that do to the public sentiment right now? I mean, previously when you have periods of oil price collapses, the Saudis have spent into those increases. If we think back to what happened in 08, 09, they actually did the biggest budget in Saudi history. So it'll be very interesting to see how the public reads the moves that have happened over the weekend. And I think the oil price recovery will be key to changing sort of public sentiment as well. If they can get prices in a more constructive place, I think that will sort of turn the mood in the country. But again, that's why I think they're so focused on trying to basically do whatever it takes again, showing that Saudi Arabia will drive the sort of oil market, that they are back in charge of OPEC. And we've seen after Saudi Arabia made the announcement, UAE announced a big cut, Kuwait announced a big cut. So the OPEC heavyweights are sort of lining up to try to do what they can to stabilize this market. And again, they will say that we're already starting to see a pickup in demand as global lockdown conditions ease, people start driving again. So essentially what they're doing is acting as an accelerator in terms of getting the market rebalanced.